Welcome back to the John Hallett podcast, everybody. I am John Hallett, and I have my friend and instructor, John Whitman, founder of the Krav Maga Alliance, joining me today. How are you, John?
Doing well. How are you?
I am doing great. Good to talk to you again. It seems like Vegas was just, a few months ago, but gosh, time just flies by here.
Yeah, especially through the holidays.
Yeah. So how have you been?
Good, busy. I mean, after the holidays, New Year stuff has been good. Between running the gym and the Krav Maga Alliance, things are keeping me busy. I also finally, after like a decade of not publishing, I just finished a new book, so I'm excited about that as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's actually one of the things I wanted to ask you about in there, because I was surprised doing a little bit of research of like, oh my gosh, he has 67 titles to his name. Is that around correct, or is Amazon?
That sounds right, but let's be honest. A lot of those, no offense to the publishers that I worked with back then, but a lot of those books are kind of hack books. Like they're little tchotchkes. Not all of them are big, massive novels that you should put on your shelf. There are a few books there that I'm very, very proud of, but when you say 67, there's a lot of little things in there.
Yeah, there's like a lot of little books in there, but hey, still, you got your name on them, and you did something for them. No matter, little things all add up. So,
right.
Most of us in the Krav Maga community know your Krav Maga books, but a lot of people don't know that. I remember the first time I saw one of your books, I was just like scanning through the grocery store book section for something to read on a vacation, and I'm like, John Whitman, and I'm like. I think it was the Star Wars or the 24 series. I forget.
Yeah, so the two biggest things that I wrote back then, I did a lot of what were called media tie-ins, where the books were original, so they're all my stories. But basically, because of some work I'd done and some creative writing I had done in the past, I made a connection with Lucasfilm. I did some stuff indirectly for Star Wars back in the day, and they liked my work, so they asked me to do some original stories, original books set in the Star Wars universe. So I wrote a series called Galaxy of Fear for young adults, for kids, really. They're called chapter books. And that sold really well. And because of that, I had other companies contact me about doing the same thing, where it was inside the world they created, but it was original story. So I did some other things that are not worth talking about. But I also wrote 4 novels about Jack Bauer from the series 24.
Yeah, that was a great series.
I enjoyed that. It was actually challenging because, the first book was cool because the books had to be in the same format as the show. So basically, actually, every book that I wrote was actually 25 chapters. So I got to write a prologue, and the prologue could be anywhere from the day before to a month. The prologue could be for any time frame. But once the actual first chapter started, every chapter was like an hour. And I had to count for every minute of every hour. And it was cool the first time. By the third book, it was exhausting.
I bet. Yeah, that must be hard.
Well, just think about any book you've ever read, really any even short story you've ever read, probably has some moment where the author writes, and later that day, or the next day, or after sleeping on it, like something that moves time forward. I couldn't do any of that.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah, that was an interesting series. So, well, tell us a little bit about you outside of Krav Maga. What do you like to do outside the gym?
Well, it's going to sound like I'm joking, but I'm not. I play the banjo.
Yeah.
I'd always wanted to play a musical instrument, and I'm not musical at all, but I always wanted to learn something. And I picked up the typical instruments. I tried piano when I was younger, and I played guitar. And I can do a little guitar now, but years ago I tried it, and nothing felt right to me. And as weird as it sounds, my grandfather, he's passed away, but when he was a young man, he played the banjo. And so one day I just picked up a banjo and I felt okay with it. So I started playing it. And I played on and off. I was not good. I wasn't consistent. And then what happened, reaching back really a couple decades, in a Muay Thai fight, I broke my left arm. And I actually had nerve damage from that break. It broke the ulna, and I dislocated my elbow. And the bones healed well enough, but the elbow dislocation damaged everything in my arm. And I couldn't move my fingers for, I think it was something like 6 weeks or 2 months. Eventually everything came back, but for a while I couldn't move my fingers. And the doctors told me it was going to be okay. Like, they gave me the whole rundown medically about how it's fascinating how the nerve itself can be severed, but the sheath in which the nerve grows is really tough to break. And they said basically your nerve snapped, but the sheath is still intact. So it'll basically, they said it's about a week per inch and it'll grow back. And they predicted almost to the day when I was moving my fingers again, and they were right.
Wow.
I bring that up because once the movement came back, I wanted to find something I could do to really, really work on getting my dexterity back. And if you can imagine, guitar or banjo, in my case, moving your fingers was important. Yeah. So I this thing that I picked up years ago and kind of played on and off just for the fun of it, it became a hobby because I wanted to work on my dexterity, and I've been playing ever since.
Well, that's great. I know.
It's still terrible, by the way, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, who cares? You're right. Who cares?
It's a banjo. It always sounds bad.
Yeah. So yeah, that'd be awesome for sitting around the campfire here in Colorado, and when they don't have a fire ban. And
anytime you want to invite me out, if you have guests you don't want to be at the campfire, bring me out. I'll play the banjo. They'll be gone in minutes.
Yeah, they'll be gone. Clear out everybody. I know. I told my students I did a little thing for the teen class and the kids class that they could shock knife me if they could tell me what a Nantucket sleigh ride was.
Oh, did they get a ride?
Two of I thought would get more kids trying to participate, but only two did. They did it. I was like,
so they got it right. They do. It's the whole whaling thing, right? Where they'd harpoon the whale and get dragged along in the boat.
Yep, exactly. So I was like, if we get enough, then I'll sing or something. And a bunch of people like, I'm like, I always wanted to be a singer, but I don't have a good voice. But the same thing. I'm like, I wish I was good.
Yeah.
So, but
anyway, so I play the banjo, and obviously I do writing. I enjoy reading, but that's it. I mean, that when I'm not doing martial arts stuff, aside from general family stuff, I'm trying to get better at music, and I'm working on my book.
Yeah. What's the book that you just wrote?
So the one I just finished, which should be published hopefully at the end of this month, is a science fiction novel. Again, I wrote Star Wars back in the day. And that one is done. It's part of a 3-part series. I'm kind of tinkering with the second book in that series now. But the other book that I'm trying to finish, as that one is complete, is a book about as you'd expect, a Krav Maga guy. It's fiction. It's not a how-to book. It's actually an action novel about a guy who knows Krav Maga, of course. That's my next book. The book I finished is science fiction. It's actually in a very roundabout way. It's a retelling of the Civil War, but it's set in space. If you imagine that instead of there being 50 states, or at that point, however there were 30 some odd states, that some of whom are trying to secede. It's actually Earth has colonized a number of planets, and some of them are trying to secede. One of them in particular, and basically it's that theme about the rights of the organization versus the rights of the individual entity. But it plays out in space. So hopefully people like it.
Yep, that's cool. I look forward to checking it out.
Thanks.
So, tell us a little bit how the Krav Maga Alliance got started.
Well, that's a story. You were actually part of that story. Again, without getting, I'm not shy about sharing politics, but without getting too deep in the weeds for anybody.
We don't need to do that.
I used to be the president of Krav Maga Worldwide, and that ended. There was a parting of the ways, let's say. And the truth is, back then, I didn't really have plans to start my own organization. I definitely wanted to start my own gym because I love teaching, but I didn't have plans to do an organization. But what happened, I think is inevitable with most of us, and I'm sure you have people like this in your circle, but a lot of the people a lot of the school owners who were connected to my old company, Krav Maga Worldwide, they associated their training with me personally. And when I was no longer the main person there, they approached me and said, listen, we still want to keep training through you, and we want to get a black belt through you. Is that okay? And I said to this small group, I said, sure, I'm happy to do it, but I have no organization behind it. I have nothing to give you except to say that, yes, in my opinion, you passed your test, you're a black belt. And the first group was relatively small, but they said, yes, we want to do it with you. And I was honored by that, of course. And at the time, I really had nothing behind it, no logo, no organization or nothing, but they wanted to test with me. So I said yes. And again, I'm simplifying a bigger story, but people came out and I ran a black belt test. I'd run many black belt tests before when I was the head of worldwide. So I ran their test, and this group passed. They were all great. And sure enough, afterward, they all said, "Great, we passed. Now, what do we get for that?" And I said, "Well, I told you I don't have anything, but I'll try and make something up if you want." And they said, "Yes, please." So two things from that moment, two things fell together. One, I thought, well, what am I going to call myself? And I just said, frankly, from being a Star Wars writer, I said, you know what? Alliance. We'll do Krav Maga Alliance. Nobody else has called that. So we're going to be the Krav Maga Alliance. And I came with that name. And then as it happened, there was a guy, I'm still friends with him, but he's a graphic designer. And years before that, when I was running worldwide, he came to me with a variation of what was at the time the only logo being used in the US, the circle logo that most of us know, the KUFMEM logo. He had come up with a variation of that. And he pitched it to me as something that we should use. This was, again, years and years ago. And my response to him was, hey, that's a cool looking logo, but why would I do that? We spent all these years branding that circle logo. Like, that's been our brand. We're working really hard to expand that. I don't want to dilute that. And he understood, and he went away. So I called that guy up after these people passed the black belt test. I said, hey, I need a logo for deployment. Do you have that logo still? He said, sure. So I bought it off him. And literally within 24 hours, I had a name and I had a logo, and I created diplomas for these first few people who had done their black belt test. And it just grew from there. Like that group were now part of the Krav Maga Alliance, and we created a basic agreement. A few more people heard about that and joined. And I mean, this is going to be me doing kind of a humble brag, but my proudest statement about the Krav Maga Alliance, which is now like 15 years old, is that we've never actually marketed. It's all been word of mouth. The only caveat is that 1 year, because we got invited, 1 year we did go to like the martial arts super show, and we had a booth for 1 weekend. We did that because they invited us out there, and I wanted to take advantage of the invitation. But aside from that 1 weekend, we've never actually marketed. We don't send out emails. Everything we do is word of mouth, and we've grown from that. So it all started from that weekend of a few people wanting to do a black belt test.
Yep. Yeah. I remember putting Troy Straith in charge. I'm like, you tell him. You tell him, like, we just want to train with him. I mean, I felt, I was in that group of, I just want to continue training with you because I think you're just a great guy. And like I said, like, I don't want to involve the politics. I just want to train. And, I always felt like it was a great community that was around you, and, wanted to join that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that part's true, whether I'm not taking credit for that personally, but that group of people that really wanted to work together is and was a great community. And I think we all felt that first weekend of that black belt test. It was an awesome group. And it's only grown from there. And, a lot of those people are still involved, not all of them, but a lot of them are still involved. And I've always liked that. In fact, you mentioned politics. If you look at the Krav Maga Alliance website, that's the first line of one of the first paragraphs is, we don't want to be involved in politics. And to this day, I tell people that you can be part of other organizations as well if you want to. Stay with us as long as you think we're benefiting you. If you feel like we're no longer benefiting you, then leave and do something else. Like I just want it to be a productive, energetic, and positive program. That's not a piece, but for everybody. And I want it to be an influence on their lives that's good, that helps them as individuals and as school owners. So, and I think by and large, we've done that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's great. Sometimes, I think students coming in don't kind of quite understand the loss of the trademark and that type of thing, or even like you have an instructor, they don't even understand that. And it's funny. That's one of the things I say all the time. I'm like, Krav Maga Worldwide fell apart. I ended up following John Whitman. He's just grown. I'm like, and one of the crazy things is he doesn't market. He's just a great guy. The community, the instructors, and it has grown. I mean, how many affiliates are there now?
Well, it would have been a bigger number pre-COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. Pre-COVID's a better number, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. No, honestly, right now, post-COVID, I think we have about, if you count locations, it's in the mid 80s, maybe low 80s. Pre-COVID, it was 130.
Yeah.
So COVID hit us badly, like as it hit everybody else in different ways. But honestly, like I don't get me wrong, I want the organization to grow. In fact, I just had a meeting this morning with some people about how we can start growing again. But I think one of the things that's helped, and again, it's back to this humble brag thing, but we have focused on servicing the people that are part of our group. Instead of looking for the next round of people to join, it's all been about what can we do to service the people that we have. And I think that approach has helped out overall. I mean, you can speak to that more than I because you're on the receiving end, but that's generally been where we put our energy.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. It's like, the great stuff, the 15-minute mentoring, fantastic stuff there. And,
Thank you. And for anybody who hasn't watched those or heard of them yet, basically these are videos that we put out for the affiliates. And I mentioned the Martial Arts Super Show a few minutes ago. And tell me, John, if this is like your experience too, but the whole reason I came up with that idea of 50-minute mentor is I've been to a lot of martial arts business seminars, lots and lots of different events, and they're all good. I get something from all of them, even the ones that I think are less full of information. I still get something from them. But whether it's a really great seminar or a poor one, I always feel like they're too long. That the presenter has some really good kernels of information, but it's usually a few things sprinkled in like an hour or 2 hour long presentation. And I wanted to take that idea and condense it. By the way, I'm not really accusing the presenter of putting a lot of fluff in there. I just feel like they're giving a presentation and they've been given an hour, so they try and fill the hour that they were asked to fill. So I tried to strip away all the other stuff and just boil it down to 15 minutes of one topic. And by the way, to add one more thing, when the presentation is good, it's full of good stuff, but it's almost too much good stuff. Like the presenter goes off on 3 different areas, all of which are great, but it's too much information for me to focus on. Yeah. So I try to pick one, to do laser focus on one topic. And so these 15 mentors are not 3 topics, they're not 3 aspects of one topic. Literally, it's one thing that we're talking about for 15 minutes. And so far it's been well received. Yeah,
I like it. It doesn't take a ton of time to have your staff watch it, for you to take 15 minutes and you're like, okay, I can take this bite-sized thing and focus on this, versus there's so many ideas after you leave one of those super shows or anything like that. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have so much. And I think we've both been sitting at one and be like, oh yeah, I have notes on that, but I never got around to it. When you got that 15 minutes, you can kind of focus on that for a couple weeks and try to grow that and get it going.
Yeah, that's the idea. And I think it's beneficial. I'm exactly the same boat as you are. I've come away with tons of information, but it's overwhelming to implement. What I hope is that when we talk about these small topics, it is not only informational, but as you said, it's you can implement it. It's not about, hey, we've got to step back and spend a month planning a process. It's like, here's one thing you could start doing tomorrow in your gym, and you'll see some improvement. And by the way, and even though I'm sometimes the presenter of these, I've learned a ton by doing the 15-minute mentors. And I've left the discussion on Zoom and I've gone down to my staff and say, okay, here's what we're doing right now. And it's worked.
Yeah, I think they're great. Actually, one great tool I've been using, I keep telling my social media and podcast producer that I'm going to fire him, that he shouldn't have introduced me to it, is that chat.openai platform that I get it mixed up with that.
I think Chat GPT, is that what it is?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'm always like, gross national product. I'm like, no, it's not gross national product.
So are you actually using it? Because I know of it, but I'm not using it.
So I am using it. We've been experimenting with it this week to write descriptions for Facebook or Instagram or YouTube.
Okay.
It's phenomenal.
Huh.
That way I'm like, right. And we've got some ideas for little videos, like write me a Krav Maga kids bully-proof TV commercial. And it's like 30 seconds to a minute that it full on writes what he's like, that's pretty much my job right there. Besides like it writes code.
Wow. So is it but it's not active, right? Once that script, it's a script, and then you have to create the product afterwards, right?
Yep. Yeah. I've done, give me an ad campaign for our Project Fit class, and it pulls off stuff out. Like, I'm like, that sounds like me. That's
Huh.
like that little line in there on our description on our website. It expanded on
Okay.
like different things, community, and it writes out an ad or a description, like get people motivated to come into my gym about my Project Fit class. And it will write a description on it. It's pretty crazy what it'll do for you.
Are you pointing it at some source material?
Nope. All I do is ask a question and I mean, even it's tell me what to do when somebody chokes me from the front isn't all that bad. A description of what
Huh.
to do.
Wow.
So, but it's right. Yeah, it writes radio commercials. Write me a radio script or something. You could do voiceover on your video.
Huh.
It writes the script. Like I've done a bunch of experiments and we've got a couple kind of launched on Facebook. Just none of them are ads, but they would make good ads. We're like, well, let's see how it does organically.
Interesting.
It I've had it because YouTube, we're trying to grow our channel, like respond to replies. And they're of course they're so annoying half the time. But I've just started please respond to this YouTube reply. Give me a reply for YouTube to this
Wow.
statement, to this question, and it'll blast it out. I'm like, wow, it took me a minute and a half for this thing to produce a answer. And I was sitting there going, how should I respond to this person? What's the best way? What should I say? And just to get a
And
response.
my question is about logistics. So, but then you have to cut and paste, right? Are you copying
Yep.
the?
I'll
Okay.
copy and paste it.
So
Like
it's
most
not
of the time,
implementing anything for you. Okay.
I
It's very
copy
cool.
and paste it. I had a bunch of questions for you and that I had in my head. And then I asked my wife I'm like, what do you think I should ask John? And she said, when are you going to get Joe Rogan or Jocko, get some big celebrity to endorse Krav Maga of like what they've done for BJJ? She's like, when is he going to do something like that?
That we did it way back in the day.
Yep. Yeah.
We had a lot of celebrities back in the day. Nothing
Yep.
recently, I have to confess.
Yeah.
So tell her that I'm working on it.
Okay. And then
But
my producer,
yeah,
I am like, hey, do you got anything like in your head that you think I should ask him? And he gave me like 2 or 3 things, and I think they were similar to stuff I had. And then I was like, wait a second, let me see what the chat has to say. And it
I
gave
don't know
me
what these are.
it gave me 10 great. I'm like, well, those are great. And maybe it'll fill the gaps if I need to fill the gaps on any of my questions.
Well, I'm dying to know at least one of those. What
You
are
want to
they?
know one of them? Okay.
Sure.
Let's see. There was a great, actually, I like this one and I wanted to like try to make sure I would get it in. What advice would you give to someone who is interested in learning Krav Maga or pursuing a career as a Krav Maga instructor? I thought that
Oh,
was
well, to
a
be
good
fair
one.
to us, those are two different questions.
Yes, I like the instructor one.
Okay, make sure that you have a passion for it. And if you want to make it a business, make sure you make a distinction between your passion and the business. Because as you know, they're different things, right? If you really have a passion for making people safe, then you should be an instructor. If your interest is in your own ego, then don't do it. And I think you and I've seen both those people, right? Some people,
Yeah.
and really, they don't have to be, I'm not saying they're bad people, but some people thrive on being in front of the group and the energy they receive from that group. And I'm not criticizing that aspect of people, but that's not a good reason to become an instructor, right? That's almost a negative reason. I'm going to guess you're kind of similar. I draw attention to myself when I teach because it makes my teaching more effective, but it's not who I am. I'm actually more introverted. So you use that energy you get from the group to help them learn. But if that's your reason for doing it, then don't, because it's going to backfire on you or they're going to suffer. But if your passion really is the system and making other people safer, I can't think of a more rewarding thing to do, whether it's as a hobby or as a business, than be a teacher. It's amazing. And again, I'm talking to somebody who has all the same experiences I have, but there's nothing like having there's nothing like seeing somebody grow into their confidence through physical activity and feeling like they can now protect themselves. It's an amazing experience. And then when on those luckily rare occasions when somebody does come back and say, hey, I used this and it kept me safe, there's nothing like that feeling you get, knowing that you are part of their process of making themselves safer is amazing. So to repeat myself, my advice is, if you want to be a teacher, just make sure you're in it for the right reasons. And if you are in it for the right reasons, there's nothing more rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. I mean, sometimes I really have to psych myself up before, I start, because I am such an introvert of like, okay, gonna be in front of people, but then I just love doing that. And even in the last week, we've had an elementary school fifth grader and a freshman in high school both escape bear hugs.
Oh, wow.
And great to hear from their parents. And
yeah,
even the freshman froze up at the beginning. He had just started Krav Maga. I was kind of getting bullied a little bit. He froze up and ended up getting smacked by a kid in the hallway. And of course, it was on social media. Kids had their phones out because the kid was in his face, and
right.
it to kind of deal with that. So it was fantastic that he got jumped in the bathroom, and he's like, Dad, I escaped the bear hug, and then all of a sudden I had this kid in an armbar on the ground. I'm like, that is awesome. Like, especially how how the beginning of the year started for him. So that makes all the the tough business side, like we were talking before we hit record, it makes all the tough side of the business just so worth it to hear those stories.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And again, the people who go into it to help others will get something out of it. It is exhausting, but and you have to have some passion for it. But if you're doing it for those reasons, you get those rewards.
Yeah.
And I mentioned the business side only because your question was more about, or your chat GPT's question was about being an instructor. But I'm going to assume that some portion of those people are thinking about making it their business. And I would just say to those people, understand the difference between a hobby and a business, because as you well know, you have to run your business like a business. If you do it well, to the members, even to your staff, it still has that fun energy that, hey, we're all training in this cool stuff together. You don't want to lose that energy. But if all you do is think about your time on the mat, then you're not going to have a successful business. You're going to have a hobby that's expensive. So as long as the people who want to turn that into a business understand that, you have to draw the line and say, okay, now even though they're having fun out there, I'm going to step off the mat, come into my office, do the paperwork, plan the lessons, plan the marketing, or have my chat GPT plan the marketing for me. But you have to do that non-fun stuff. So I realize that's a slightly different question, but I get that advice all the time to people. If you love this and you just want to keep doing it, then be an instructor somewhere, teach for somebody else, or teach at a club or at the YMCA. And that's great. You can get that same feeling of a reward. But if you want to make it a business, understand that you're not running a business.
Yeah, I think that's a tough side. And even, I started and I was doing carpentry and doing Krav Maga part-time and turned into a business. But sometimes you gotta, it can take you a couple of years of like, hey, I've got to really run this as a business, especially when it starts to grow and expenses start to add up, and you like, hey, it was all well and good when you're in the local health club, but trying to cover overhead and other expenses. And
this was all back in Nantucket, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I knew you back then, but I can't recall. Did you have an actual school, a standalone school back there in Nantucket, or did that start when you moved out to Colorado?
We had, when I started Krav Maga, I was a Taekwondo instructor. Had left my instructor, and kind of the same thing. I couldn't get out of the grocery store without parents asking me if I was going to teach again.
Okay.
So I kind of started my own little thing, mainly because we pulled our kid out. And so I started my own little thing at a ballet dance school. I rented space, and I also rented space from our local health club, rented their aerobics room for my adult program. That I then, being a carpenter, I built a cottage / studio on my property to not pay, to be able to run a bigger program. And I went, well, this is going to be a long-term investment. You can turn it into I think it was a 1 or 2 bedroom cottage. in there, and I'm like, I can always turn into a cottage and rent it. It turned out, great when we decided to move to Colorado. We're able to sell that, and the guy wanted to make it his own office, and I forget what plans he had for it, but it started to be a business then. And
you got to be the only person, at least I know, who actually built his own gym by hand.
Yeah, that was difficult. That was a lot of long days, and teaching and trying to keep it all going at the same time was tough. And then, moved out here to Colorado, and, now you're paying rent. I mean, back then, sometimes I'm like, God, I love Colorado, and Nantucket's definitely changed, but, I think it only added like $250 to my mortgage. When I built the studio, because I did it myself, and I only had to pay for material.
Right.
And I traded with other trades to get the electrical done and that type of stuff. That it only added $250 to my mortgage payment.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And now you're going overheads like crazy.
Yeah. Well, listen, I can't speak what's happening in Castle Rock, but I'm in LA, and my pre-COVID, my other building, I actually had a guy who wanted to partner with me, and we went together. We tried to buy that building, which is in the west side of LA, a very, very expensive area. And literally we approached him, and the landlord talked to me all the time about landlord stuff. But when we approached him with the idea of buying the building, he literally didn't even answer my call, wouldn't answer an email, just ignored me. So then I tried to talk to his attorney, and he also just ignored me. Like, they literally just, I'm sure they were laughing. They had no interest in selling at all because they were making so much money off of being the landlord. I wanted to be the landlord, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's so hard out here.
Yeah, it is so hard. I mean, we're not quite California, but definitely where I'm at in Douglas County, it's a, very wealthy community. So everything around here is really expensive, even pre-COVID. So I got kind of lucky with our building that we're in. We were looking to buy and do like the SBA loan and go through that. That was it. We jumped through a lot of hoops, but we got really lucky. I think it was 2015, and the guy that owned it was an architect, and the dog daycare and grooming place, they had to go out of business because that was their second location, and they weren't following all the rules for Colorado. And they were off of, I think, an Arizona business model. And I think one of the other doggy daycares turned them in to not have enough staff at night. So we got kind of lucky being able to come, because we were looking, and every building was either taken by a church that we were looking at, and a church scooped it up, and then a local gun range got the building that I was really, really wanted. I mean, the place where I was great, but the real estate agent never called me back. I'm like, you really didn't want a bidding war? You just went to one guy? I said I was interested, and they went to just one and just closed the deal. And that was the day I'm like, I went to look for a new real estate agent for the commercial side, but he's a good buddy now, so it worked out for the best. And I forgot that you bought your building. Is that Yep. Yeah, my wife and I bought the building, and we're like, that's part of the business, the retirement as a small business owner. What are we doing to take care of ourselves? Because but we don't have a 401k retirement plan from our business. I mean, we have our small little stuff we do ourselves, but not like a lot of big companies and the packages some of these people get. So
I struggle with that. Retirement itself, I struggle with. But in terms of just owning property, like I said, I tried to buy that building and couldn't. The one I'm in now, I couldn't afford the other one, but I couldn't afford this. LA is just so expensive, and I envy anybody anywhere in any market who can buy the property, because you're right, you want that. You want to own the building that you're in, so you're basically paying yourself rent or paying off your mortgage, and you'll have that thing to keep or sell when you're ready to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I tried that different play, and most landlords do like kind of laugh at you. I mean, I had one guy laugh at me. Literally, I'm like, hey, can I buy this unit? And they were like, yeah, no, we're not, like, we make way too much money off of this. We're not gonna sell this unit.
Right. So, it's one thing we never get more of is land. Well, land and time, but
Mm-hmm.
land doesn't increase. So the people who have it, it's good for them. They were smart.
Yeah, retirement's tough. My joke is with my kids class, I tell them that my retirement program is that I'm going to live with every kid that for a week or two that I have taught, and if you've driven me crazy in class, I'm staying a month. And they're like, there. So the reaction I get from them is pretty funny sometimes. So it's it's a joke, but I always tell kids, like, invest in real estate, get your own mat. You guys spread out, invest in real estate as soon as you can.
It's not a bad idea.
Just your own house. I mean, it helps set you up. I mean, that's what helped me get started here in Colorado, was having that place that I built myself. So I had a lot of equity built up because I did it myself.
Yeah. And this is probably not one of the topics for the podcast, but I'm looking at that. My kids both live in LA right now, and they're in their early mid-20s. And they are genuinely concerned about being able to afford to buy a home in LA. I mean, like Soka, they're making plans for their lives that don't include living here. Which, like, moving out of LA if you want to is fine, but moving out of LA because you can't afford it is just sad.
Yes, that's it.
So, there are plenty of things not to like about a big city like Los Angeles. And if you decide that those things aren't good for you and you want to leave, great. But if you're being driven out by housing markets, that's just sad. And these are two young professionals doing well in the careers they've chosen, and they're still thinking that they're not going to afford to buy a house here. It's rough.
That's happened here in Colorado too. Families are like, they can't afford to live here.
Yeah.
And then that person's like, oh, maybe we'll move closer to our kids and future grandkids, and they're leaving. And that's a sad thing when people have to leave the state that they love and want to actually be there, but want to make the right decision in life and not be.
Yeah, absolutely. Apparently all those people are moving to Texas and Tennessee. So I'm sure those states love it.
Yeah. I'm sure they do. Montana. So, well, I think this is a good place for a word from our sponsors. Hold on tight. We'll be right back, guys. Thanks for joining us, guys. Again, I've got John Whitman here. When we were talking a little sidetrack real estate, and I really would encourage you guys, if you're a school owner, is to check out that chat.openai.com platform, because it can really write you some really good content. It will write you a marketing plan. One of my guys is in cybersecurity, and they were asking it to write policy and give us some. They're like, it cranks it right out.
Do you just go on use a browser and get to it?
Yeah, you can use, that's the website, chat.openai.com.
Okay.
I think there was another maybe landing page, but that's what I've got up on my computer, and asked you to create a username or log in, want to use Facebook or Google. I just use my Gmail account, and it's been fantastic. I mean, some of the ads we've give me some encouragement to give to a member that's having a hard time. And it's fan, because you sit there and you struggle. I mean, I'm not a writer like yourself, and I struggle. I mean, I can come up with some content, but it's going to take me a while, or even just content for the website.
Yeah.
And it will give you, and you can rephrase your question or what you want if you don't quite like it. I've rephrased some different ways of asking it to give me a Krav Maga.
That gives you a starting point. Yeah.
Yeah. So
did you see the news the other day about the tech writer who had that interaction with either that or a similar platform, and it started writing that it was in love with him and he should leave his spouse? And I'm not joking. And it ended up being kind of creepy. Like, it was a real interaction, and I think in that same exchange, it was telling him that it wanted to be human. It was
oh wow.
Yeah.
I have gotten nothing creepy so far from this guy.
Just keep trying.
Yeah, keep trying. It did give an interesting comment on bear hug from behind. It said it might be, you never know, it might be affectionate. So be careful how you respond. So I'm like, oh, that's pretty good.
That's awesome.
Kind of
weird, but awesome.
I'm like, yeah, let's make some little funny videos off of ask chat what to do in this circumstance and what you should actually do.
But that cultural conversations coming up, right? Whether the AIs are sentient or not, is actually the secondary question. The main question that we're going to face is, do they seem alive to us? Like somebody somewhere may have a definition of sentience, and the AIs might not have crossed the line of that definition, but the cultural exchange we're going to have about how these AIs are communicating with us and how that makes us feel, how it seems alive to us, and how we respond to that feeling we're having. That's a legitimate struggle that I'm going to say we'll face individually, but we'll face as a culture. Like the fact that you can have this AI that's generating text for you, right? But in the middle of it, it says, "Hey, maybe it's affectionate." Like that's the beginning of a conversation that might end in a weird way, and not that it's going to creep you out or make you feel like the thing's alive, but as human beings, we are designed to respond emotively, right, and empathetically to those kinds of statements. And we're going to have a struggle. We are going to end up wondering, have we made slaves of these computer programs?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, pretty scary. We were talking after a class the other day, and you're like, when you first got on the internet, when, you picked up your first iPhone, like these memories of how things are evolving. I'm like, the first time I'm like, oh, I'm definitely gonna remember the first time using this, because it's just so crazy and really helpful. I mean, you've got pretty much a virtual assistant at your fingertips to be able to ask it questions, and it will. My wife, because I'm like, this could be a big change. I mean, this is some white collar jobs here that this thing can potentially do. And she told me she wasn't worried. And I'm like, well, give me something you deal with in human resources, because it's great that I have the built-in human resource person for my gym at my fingertips. But she said she deals a lot with employers dealing with people wanting time off for medical. And I need to get to a doctor's appointment, and just constantly, and what the laws and regulations are behind that.
Right.
He pumped out 8 points, and each one had a good 3 to 6 sentences in there. And I just read her the first couple, and she's like, I don't know, it's not going to replace me. I'm like, well, it's never going to replace the human interaction and training and being able to deal kind of, well, at this point in real time. But it was all stuff I've heard her say to her clients.
Right.
Like, I'm like, it knows, and everything on the, the laws. I mean, you're in a state that's got a ton of employment law, and she deals with some California clients, and just staying up to date on what California is doing. She's like, it's sometimes a full-time job of how the laws change and how you, have to deal and treat employees correctly.
And obviously, I don't want anybody to lose their job, but let's face it: if the AI can generate those responses that are legitimate, and if you want to put a virtual face to that, like you and I are on Zoom right now, like for all I know, you could be an AI.
Yeah, exactly.
I can be talking to your chat open AI thing right now, and it just looks like you. It could be creepy. Now, to turn this back to the whole martial arts world, this is one of the reasons that I like our business, aside from the fact that I enjoy doing it. My personal belief, and I said this as COVID was opening up, and I believe it held true then, and will hold true in our futures. As the world gets more technological, people will want to do what we do more. That people want to find ways to be active. And I'm a firm believer in that. I'm sure you heard this, and maybe you and I talked about it when we were chatting a little bit during COVID. But in the middle of COVID, Peloton was getting big, and other online training programs were getting big, and people were talking about it being the end of brick and mortar gyms. And my personal response was, well, those things might last. I'm not predicting how successful those online type programs will be in the long term. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that as soon as people can, they want to get out of their houses and do something active. And as a corollary to that, the more people's jobs become telecommuting jobs where they're working from home, the more they want to get out of their house to do something. And I don't know what's happening with you, but that's what happened here. We had a huge boom in membership as soon as people could get out of the house. People want to be active. And one thing that will be hard to replace. I hate to predict and say it will never be replaced because the future is interesting, but it'll be hard for virtual training to replace what we do on the mat. People do want to have active interaction. They want to train. They want to sweat. They want to be in a room with somebody else. I think that what we do has some job security, even as the world gets more and more technological.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, people love that sense of community, and you can't really get that from a screen. And, you know, we're humans. We need human interaction. I think that's going to be replaced. And exactly, like, there's so much out there that people, you know, you can go and train, but you need a training partner. Oh, maybe you got one at home, but having that sense of community and just sometimes just that separation from your family, like, great, train with your brother, but maybe you need to mix it up and meet some other people.
Yes, go into a new space. You say meet new people, go into a new space, change the ambiance around you. You just want to be out of your location. And that you touched on it a second ago. When I'm talking about people want to do things that can't be replicated by online training, I'm referring not just to fitness but martial arts. Like it's not my thing, but yes, I recognize some people like Peloton, or they can do an online yoga course and do the yoga move thrown on the screen. That wouldn't be my cup of tea personally, but I get that some people achieve their goals through that. But if you're gonna do martial arts, you have to have other bodies in the room.
Yeah, and you need other people too. You're like different attackers.
You have to be with people who can do the move with you, who can spar with you, who can choke you, who can practice techniques with you. You have to. And so it's going to be, again, for all I know, in 100 years, there'll be androids you can train with. But for now, people who have any interest in doing this sort of thing have to go to a school. And so I think that we're okay for the near future.
Yeah, I think so.
I hope your wife's also okay, but I know that the martial arts.
I hope most people are okay. And, you know, we aren't eliminating and creating some other type of crisis with this thing, but, you know, who knows where the world will take us? Because, you know, the AI in the future of this stuff, it just moves so fast. It's crazy. So what do you have planned for the future for the Alliance? Anything coming up on the radar?
Really, we're still in kind of a reopening process. Like the world, we shut down. We did very few activities for a couple of years. So you were there. We did our first trial by firearms post-COVID back in November. So we're kind of just ramping back into some of the activities we had before. We do a firearm training course every year. We do advanced testing. Two new things that I'm doing this year that are coming up, actually. We have done an active shooter certification in the past, but mostly it wasn't a thing we advertised. It was by request. So we created a program. There are lots and lots of people doing active shooter courses. I like to think ours is good, but I'm not going to claim it's the only one. What might be unique about ours is that it wasn't just some martial arts guys getting together, although that's always a part of it because we're martial arts guys. But I have training from Israel in VIP protection and installation protection. I went through a course for that stuff in Israel. So I have some background in it. And I think you know Jeremy Stafford. Jeremy Stafford, he's with a local police department, and he was one of the people in charge of writing the police protocol for his department when there are multiple engagements of active shooters. And so he and I put our heads together and created a program. I did a ton of research on current data for active shooter situations. And I put together what I hope is a really good course informationally and with hands-on training. So we're doing that course in a couple of months for instructors. And one thing that is also new is next month, I think it is, we're doing just a black belts only weekend. So it's free, and I'm going to pitch the Krav Maga Alliance here. This is going to be like another commercial for your podcast, but we try and give away as much stuff as we can to affiliates to make them stronger and better. So we do a free advanced preparation weekend every year, but in addition to that, we're doing a free black belts weekend. So anybody who's an advanced student can come out. We're going to do advanced training, and on top of that, I have a 2-time Muay Thai world champion coming in to do a block of training. And I have Dave Kovars, who's a very well-known and respected martial artist and school owner, business owner coming down to do a business seminar. And all that's free for anybody in the Krav Maga Alliance who wants to come just train.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, I love that type of stuff, except when they fall on my family vacation.
Sorry, just send them off on their own.
Yep, I know. There's always something. Anytime I have something planned, something else, it's just the way it is. Like always, like when there's something to do, there's 2 or 3 things to do on the same exact time.
When I was a young up and coming instructor years and years ago, every big event that we had where I was kind of supposed to do training for my instructor degree or preparation for some big thing, and this is back when there were like 200 or 300 people doing Krav Maga in all of the US, right? It was very small. So when there was an event, you had to go to it, like there's only a chance. Every single one fell during a weekend when there was a wedding my wife and I were invited to.
Oh gosh.
So like, and God bless her, she supported me, but I think I missed like, I think 10 weddings in like 4 years.
Oh gosh.
Because they were all right when there was a Krav Maga event.
Yeah. Oh, that's tough.
But as far as the future for Krav Maga Alliance and new events, we're really just focused on things, like I said, that help affiliates. So it's really anything we can do, more of these business seminars. We're looking for kind of the next big thing that can help schools, whether it's, the open AI stuff or whether it's other marketing tools. We ask a lot of questions. We're kind of just focused on what can help the school owners. Some of it is training, that's why the Black Belt weekend, but some of it is just what can we do next? So we do ask a lot of questions about the software people are using right now, and not just the AI stuff, but the behind the scenes back office stuff people are using. You and I talked about it before this conversation started. I'm always curious about what is working for people, and it's not about making a deal with that company. It's just, let's find out what's working and tell every school owner about what's working for them and get the word out so we can all compare. I'm always asking, I'm not dictating, I'm asking school owners what they're using, because if they discovered a thing that can help other schools, we want the world to know about it.
Yeah, and that's like one of the benefits of being part of an organization. If you got that help and people with other ideas and sharing them and everybody trying to get better, which is great. Yeah. What do you think, after the loss of the trademark, the state of Krav Maga in 2023, and, what do you think direction we should be taking, or, adding what, in the realm of self-defense and how that changes, what are your opinions on the state of Krav Maga and where we should be going?
Well, this is where I might make some enemies in the podcast, but honestly, losing that trademark years ago ultimately benefited me, because when I got pushed out of Worldwide, I got to still be a Krav Maga instructor, right? So I was one of the people, and some of the people watching the podcast might not like me for this, but I was one of the people back at Krav Maga Worldwide who was pushing for Worldwide to own that trademark. And to be totally blunt, of course, we wanted to make a successful business out of it for us, but we weren't trying to deny other legitimate Krav Maga instructors access. We just wanted to control the name. Because what we didn't want to happen is, this is the part where I'm going to piss off people, we didn't want to happen what has happened, where everybody can now say they're a Krav Maga instructor. And I'm not going to name any names or talk about any organizations, but you and I both know there are some real bullshit organizations out there.
Yeah.
People who don't really know what they're doing and don't really understand Krav Maga and had minimal training, but then suddenly go off and they're opening their own organization. We were trying to stop that. And we failed. The judge in court decided that Krav Maga couldn't be trademarked, and that opened the door for all kinds of people to start using the name. Now, listen, some of them are great, and they're not necessarily people that I'm friends with. They might not like me, but they're legitimate instructors. They should be using the name. They have a right to do what they're doing. They paid their dues either by being, doing stuff in Israel or doing stuff with legitimate instructors anywhere else. They should own it. But there are also plenty of people who are just not good. And that is hurtful to the system as a whole. Now, as to what can be done about it, the answer is nothing except be as good as you can be.
Yeah.
So because you can't legally stop those people from saying they're Krav Maga, but what you can do is be good enough to make them seem inadequate.
Yeah. I always tell students that are moving, like, look, base it on here. Hopefully you think I'm good. You thought this was good Krav Maga. Go and check out other places. If you want me to check them out and, see how they're doing, I can look at the school for you and give you my opinion. But the biggest thing is go in there and check out the training.
Yeah.
You've taken, I think that's the biggest problem with losing it really is just, people think all Krav Maga is Krav Maga.
Yeah.
It's not, unfortunately, now.
Yeah, exactly. And when you talk about like checking out schools, I did a broadcast a while ago to all the affiliates about just, make sure you're sharp in your focus mitt work, like not just you, but your students. Because if you put a video out, whether it's social media or an ad showing good, sharp focus mitt work, just that will differentiate you from a whole bunch of Krav Maga schools that, frankly, they're not good. And I want to get into the ideas of whether their gun defenses are good or their other things are good. Just crack the focus mitts in a sharp, professional, aggressive way with good technique. And that right there, put that video, that's going to differentiate you from a dozen schools around you that don't really know how to punch.
Yeah, I remember that. I took that to heart when you put that out. That was great thing that you put out. So,
and for the future, for the growth of the system, to the extent that we can influence that growth, right? It's a more specific version of the same comment about quality. We need to address real concerns and, frankly, look at Krav Maga and see what its strengths are and where it's weak, and work on those weaknesses. And from my interaction with our affiliates over the last, I would call it 7 to 8 years, we focused for several years on getting better at our stand-up fighting. And then once you really saw a growth and improvement in the stand-up fighting of our affiliates and our instructors, and then after that it was getting better on the ground. And for those people watching, you will probably all know Krav Maga's always had stand-up fighting and always had ground fighting, but as a system that emphasizes self-defense, there has always been a danger. I won't say people are good or bad, but there's been a danger of people ignoring the fight aspect of self-defense, and on the ground doing minimal groundwork because they were uncomfortable. And I hope that as an organization, we have forced people past those flaws into better training. And I've certainly seen it that the growth of in those areas where people come to us for advanced training. And I hope that's also trickling down to the students that they have in their schools, just to make people safer overall.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's definitely, a tough state. And I think, that Krav Maga trying to evolve and keep things fresh. I think, you've done a good job. And even, what are people going to face out there in the streets and having a better ground game? Because I don't know the numbers, but I certainly believe BJJ is a whole lot more popular than karate and taekwondo combined these days.
Yeah.
Especially in the adult market.
Yeah, more people are taking it. So there's an increased chance the person you end up in a stupid fight in the parking lot might know some stuff. And if you don't mind me sharing this goal from the Krav Maga Alliance, I actually used that statement you just made about that being a popular system to set standards for us. So the standards that I have for us, as an organization, one of them is that I want somebody who ends up with a blue belt in Krav Maga to be able to grapple, to roll with a blue belt in BJJ, but using their rules, not ours, and at least hold their own. Now, for those people who don't know, what's interesting about that is that a blue belt in Krav Maga is like the first advanced belt. It's a relatively high belt in Krav Maga. It's not a black belt, but it's relatively high. A blue belt in BJJ is their first belt, but that person has spent a lot of time on the ground. They're a beginner on the ground, but they're a pretty good beginner as a blue belt in BJJ. The reason I use that as our standard is that BJJ is quite popular now, but most people quit after their blue belt.
Yes.
I've heard numbers like 80, 85%. I'm not sure where those come from. I will pass those on without being able to say that that it's a definitive number, but I'll call it a lot of people. I've heard 80% of people quit BJJ after their blue belt, which tells me, okay, the odds of me facing a really, really high level grappler on the street are pretty slim. But the odds of me facing some guy who's done some decent training on the ground and understands mount and how to escape mount and how to put an arm bar on, those odds are increasing. So
Yeah.
let's use that as our standard. So I want us to be able to grapple with somebody who's got that good basic knowledge by their rules and do well. And then on top of that, we add Krav Maga. Then you bite and gouge and punch and grab the testicles and things like that, on top of having the basic skills required in a follow the rules system. I think that's a reasonable goal for us to have. And we've been applying that, and I've seen the skill level of our students increase dramatically.
Yeah, I think it's been a great addition to when you kind of put that standard out for everybody in the alliance. And we've got to adapt and change, and the world is always changing, and what people are doing out there, and that's a big part of Krav Maga. We've got to
I could go on about this forever, sorry, but that adaptation happens even inside the traditional Krav Maga stuff, where when I do seminars in Europe, I'll be doing two of those the next couple months. I'll be in Barcelona, and then I'll be in Italy later on. Once in a while, we'll do gun stuff because the advanced people want to see gun because it's cool. But when they do a seminar for the public, they don't really want to do a gun seminar because they don't see guns there. Right.
Yep.
They want knife seminars and stick and fighting and all kinds of stuff. But if they want a gun seminar, it's almost as a gimmick. It's almost as a fun extra because they don't see them. So the system for you and me is the same, but the demand for certain areas of it is different in Europe than it is for here. Whereas for here, like, we're doing an active shooter seminar because those things are happening in the US.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Back when I had a lot of European students when I was on Nantucket Island, and they all wanted to see, anytime where they were getting ready to go back home, the request would be, can we do some more knife? Because that's the thing. That's the thing. And they all asked for more knife before they left, to kind of round out their training and just get a good refresher on it, because that's the big danger. They weren't worried about guns, but
and there are lots and lots of like microcosmic things to say inside these statements. For instance, like right now, among some of the police officers that I train, not only are they dealing with a lot of knives, like apparently slashing is the current thing. I'm assuming I don't know all the data here, so I don't want to speak out of school, but I'm assuming it's because the suspects, the subjects that they're talking to, are using small hidden weapons, hidden things. So not big knives, but small things that are not so good to stab with, but for slashing at the officer. So I've been getting requests to do more law enforcement training that deals with slash, not just knife, but slash, because that's what they're seeing. And it's kind of incumbent on us to keep our finger on the pulse of those activities and tailor the training to the current needs.
Yeah, knives are scary, especially coming out and not being able to see them. I am so passionate when I teach knife. I mean, it's just such a scary thing that can come out of nowhere and you don't realize they have it. It's just so scary.
Yeah. Well, this is back to basic Krav Maga about why the punch defense and the knife defense have to be similar to each other.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually just talking about that this afternoon. Keep it simple. That's one thing I love about Krav Maga. Keep it simple. Like, real self-defense is scary, and people aren't playing by any rules. So you got to be as basic as you can.
I know you're busy, but do you train anything else? Do you any other? Are you just doing Krav Maga right now? Do you have any other martial arts that you mess around with?
I've been shooting a whole lot.
Reasonable.
I keep joking with my wife. Well, she has thoughts of, retiring half the year to Belize or someplace like that. And I'm always like, but you can't have any guns. She's like, what do you need a gun for? I'm like, I'm getting old. I'm getting older. But I try to roll around. I've got a young guy that's definitely, hopefully part of the succession plan here at RMSDF, that he's fantastic. His future wife is my manager, so I think they make a great team down the line.
Great.
As I'm getting older, he does a small grappling and rolling class twice a week. I try to get that into that once a week. I kind of wish I had more time, but it seems like I'm constantly going, where can I find some more time, and not doing anything else, kind of in the family time. I've got the family into shooting as much as I can and getting out there, especially in the summertime when it's not cold here, but really trying to
How often do you
extreme
shoot?
that.
Is it, are you shooting like several times a week or once a week? How often do you shoot?
I kind of took I guess Pete talked about it in Trial by Fire, or might have been on the podcast when I had him on, that he says he tries to do it daily with his coffee. It's like every morning I try, I forget how long he said.
Like dry fire
Yeah,
exercises.
trying to do
Yeah.
dry fire. So I when I'm leaving Trial by Fire, I was like, okay, I talk about it and I run out of time. So I'm gonna really do what Pete said. And when I wrap up our early AM classes around 7:15 in the morning, after those classes are gone, I've been working on my dry fire there
Nice.
for, it might be just a quick 5 minutes, it might be 15 minutes, because if I time it wrong, the school traffic and all that, in our little town starts to get bad. Leaving and trying to deal with I've got an elementary school right down the end of my street, so like if I time it too wrong, it's going to be too late to get back for a cup of coffee and start losing more of my day just sitting there. But it's nothing compared to LA, I'm sure I well know. But I've been trying to do 5 to 15 minutes, and he had that cert training pistol.
Yeah. I bought a couple
So
of those. They're
yeah,
great.
I took him up. I'm like, hey, get me one of those.
Yeah.
So that's been fantastic. I absolutely love it. It's been a ton of fun.
I have to confess, I haven't been super consistent, but I have one in my office. It's right near me right now, actually. But I when I'm at my desk, I try and take a few minutes and use it just at my desk. What I'm not practicing enough is the draw. Frankly, because I'm in California and I don't have a CCW here, so the idea of draw from concealment isn't actively part of my lifestyle right now. I would like to have a better skill at it, but I just don't. I can't walk around with a gun, so I don't really feel that person. But in terms of just basic targeting, I pull it out of my desk or I pull it off the desktop and I practice shooting all the time. They're great for that.
Yep. Yeah, they're fantastic. And I forget the drill that I found. I'll send you the PDF and you can just print it off on your printer.
Okay.
A couple of the targets that I found that are really great for it. I'm going to
cool.
forget the guy's name. I'm so bad with names that it's on the target. I'm like, I'm giving, I put a little branding for our students here if they were to print them out in there, but I put the guy's name that came up with the drill, but it kind of goes from, it's around 1.25 inches all the way down to about a 1/4 inch target.
Wow. Okay.
And you go through from big to small, and then you go down and it's big to small, and then you go down and it's small to big, and it's like I'm gonna forget the name of it, but I won't hack it. But it's a fantastic drill.
Yeah.
I do it from 6 to 9 yards here in our we have a small studio room off that we use for privates or for our women's only, or the smallest class of the night. We'll use that room right across from our office space, but I set that up with those targets there that I can just get up and actually I can see a silhouette target out the door, and I can kind of work if somebody's in my house, those kind of scenarios too, of like, what are the odds? And it's also, what are the odds of being attacked? I mean, goodness. I mean, out there, but we want to be prepared for, as martial artists, Krav Maga people, we want to be prepared. I can't remember the last time. Well, the last time I thought maybe was at Home Depot when there was a guy that came in. I was talking to the manager over a problem I had with an order on my deck, and not things that they had kind of messed up and things were not timely, and was just trying to get a discount of like, this was a major hassle here. This took me all summer. We missed my wife's birthday, that we didn't have a deck for her birthday party in August. And this guy came in, big fella, kind of came shoulder to shoulder with me and started giving this guy the riot act, calling him all sorts of names and everything. The girl behind the counter is looking scared. This guy's looking pretty panicked. And I just thought he was kind of being rude and barging into my space. And I didn't want to be near him. And I said, hey, I don't really think you're being very nice. And I took a few steps away from him, and he started letting into me, calling me all sorts of names. And I'm like, listen, hey, back off. I got no problems with you. Stay away from me. I think somebody should call 911 because this guy is seeming really aggressive. And that was he kind of yelled at me one more time. And I'm like, somebody call 911. This guy's a problem.
Yeah.
You could kind of see it in his head going, wait a second, are they really calling? Is somebody calling the cops here?
Right.
But he calmed down there and left. And I was like,
Good for him.
man, this guy's pretty big. That second, I'm like, this guy's pretty big. If he gets any closer, he hasn't taken a step. I've taken, I was probably 8 feet away from him, from being shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm glad. I was like, that guy's big. I really don't, none of us, I don't want to test my skills unnecessarily, but I'm like, if this guy gets near me, I am not going. This guy's a big dude. This is full on. I thank all the big guys I've trained with. But then it was just I went and walked out the other door. I was like, I don't know if that guy's out there waiting for me.
Right.
In the parking lot. I went out kind of the big lumber area and scanned the parking lot and made sure it was safe to get back there. But that was the last instance that I've had that was even close. But I want to train every day and be sharp. Right. So
I actually have kind of if you don't mind me sharing stories or comparing stories, I have the opposite thing. So this was years ago now. My most recent fight, if you include COVID years, was probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. It was a while ago. It was actually on a soccer field playing a soccer game. And you mentioned training, and I'm going to attribute everything I'm about to say to training, not to my own skill, because it was a really easy thing to manage. Being a long story short, one of my teammates collided with the other team, and they both kind of hit the ground. They hit each other, hit the ground, and they came up punching. And they were mad at each other, obviously. So I was close to them, and I stepped between them, but I knew that my teammate wouldn't punch me, so I stepped between them with my back to my teammate and pushing the other guy off. I was not trying to fight. I was trying to break up the fight. This other guy was enraged, right? He was angry at everybody at that point. And he moved a step or two away from me because I shoved him off, and he came back at me, and it was physical. It wasn't the de-escalation that you managed, but it was the easiest thing that it was easier than defending 360 in a beginner class. He came back aggressive and angry, but with like this big, giant, looping, horrible punch. And it was the easiest 360 block I've made. And that includes training with beginner students. Yeah. It was a horrible punch. And what the value I take from it wasn't a good punch by any measure, but the fact that we do the stuff we do made it even easier to manage. It was simple because of the training that we do. And by the way, I didn't want to get red carded myself, so I didn't block and punch. I blocked and I grabbed his throat and I swept him and put him on the ground. And that was the end of it. It was no more than that. But when you talk about wanting to be ready, I think of myself as an average person. I think the average person would have been surprised by that punch. Yeah. And would have been startled and not know what to do. But because we do this all the time, it was really incredibly easy to manage. And I think that state of readiness is a big part of that.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people will panic or just be caught by surprise. And that's why training consistently, adds up, that you don't get caught with something that you're going to end up, on somebody's video camera looking ridiculous because you're the guy that didn't know how. I mean, I go back to guys telling me that they don't want to look dumb in the class. And I'm like, do you want to look dumb in the class where everybody's supportive, everybody just wants to get better? Or are you going to look dumb out in front of your friends, or worse, your family? Right. That's where I don't want to look dumb. That, who cares? Get over it and learn how to defend yourself. Who cares?
And also, being out there, not only do you look dumb, you might get hurt. Like
yeah. Besides the fact that you might look dumb, you might. I mean, you never know what one punch can do. Yeah. I mean, there was a hockey fight between dads back in New England around, probably, I've been in Colorado now 17 years. So it was over 17 years ago, but the dads got in a fight after the hockey game, and the bigger dad punched the smaller dad. And I think it was probably the falling on the concrete or asphalt but he died from essentially one punch and hitting the ground hard. You just never know. So that's, one of the reasons I train of, be safe, be able to, protect your family, protect yourself, and go home safe.
Well, to kind of weave a couple of our topics together about the idea that it's hard to replace what we do on the mat with virtual training. Along the same lines of that readiness and that you never know thing. You mentioned surprise a minute ago. What I tell my students is that the thing is, in addition to the techniques themselves, you have to realize that the person who's going to attack you, whether it's an enraged guy in the street with road rage or a drunk guy in the bar or whatever it is, for whatever reason that person is motivated, they are willing to break the social contract. And a lot of them are assuming that you are not willing to break that contract, right? Especially the predators, people who are going to mug you or beat you up, or even just bullies. Like the bully he's not using these phrases in his head, but the bully or the mugger has decided that he's going to break the social contract. He's going to do something that's out of bounds. And he's almost counting on us not to have that same willingness, to be surprised and shocked, to be on the back foot, to be behind the curve when he comes after us. And the more we can train ourselves not to be behind that curve, to put ourselves on the same footing he's on, the better off we're going to be. And frankly, the more surprised he's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. That's I'm like one of the fun aspects of Krav Maga training is doing those type of drills and having some fun with that. But putting yourself in those contexts, I think are great. Or, even the de-escalation stuff. Cause sometimes I am like, well, we want to be ready. And sometimes I feel like my Krav Maga students sometimes are a little, whether it's the hype of the class, they've been doing Krav Maga. I'm like, well, you can't exactly just go around and punch people. Like, right. I'm like, bad neighborhood or a drill like that where people are giving each other a hard time. I'm like, well, you can't just hit people, or I did a de-escalation thing with my kids class, which was pretty comical because I'm like, I want you to de-escalate your parents. We've all made your parents mad. You know when you made them mad, don't get them more angry, work on your de-escalation instead of being a kid and saying something dumb. And I gave him some examples that I've heard around my house recently. Calm them down. One of you is the parent, the other one's the kid. And I want you working on calming down the parent. And it was comical, but of course they turned it into a little bit of Krav Maga where I was like saying to them, I'm like, I'm a little concerned on how you role model a parent because there seemed to be a lot of attacking. There's a lot of hitting. They turned it into three, they started pushing and just turning it into kid Krav Maga. And there was a lot of 360s. I'm like, I'm really concerned that your parents are hitting you. And of course they're like, oh no. And the parents are over there going, oh my gosh. But, they had a blast trying to, play around, and it was a little bit of humor, but trying to get them.
Hilarious. I love that.
De-escalate. I think that's an.
But that's what you just told the Home Depot. That sounded like fantastic de-escalation. Like you managed that really well.
Yeah, I didn't want to fight the guy. I just really wanted to get out of Home Depot and get on with my day because literally, it was ridiculous, John. The amount of hours, and I had tracked it with this guy. I'm like, I've been on hold with you people, and this, you're like, this is pre-COVID. I was on hold with them for multiple hours. Of course, I was working, and had them on speaker. Right, I had gone into the store, only be told like there's nobody there multiple times. I had so many hours wrapped up in just trying to get things right for this project that it was just ridiculous. And I'm like, that could just kind of topped off the whole like last day of dealing with Home Depot. So
ironically, that guy probably had the same complaint.
Yeah, he probably did. I think there was something that, because I was getting a discount. I'm like, dude, if you just are nice to this guy, he's going to give you a discount on your project. That's what I'm trying to get. Don't get the guy mad. Yeah. But, I'd rather much rather walk away than have to use your skills. I think that's a rookie martial artist of like looking to apply and use their skills. I'm like, use them in the gym, have good people. You can test those skills out on, willing participants that want to test their skills.
And also the challenge of, I'm not sure if you find this, but the challenge of practicing de-escalation is, first of all, people don't come for that. As you said, they're new, they want to do the cool stuff. But aside from the fact that it's not a crowd pleaser all the time, you need a good partner for that. Like you need somebody who's willing to do some decent role playing.
Yeah.
Because we've done it, and I put a couple of videos out about this, but just like informal ones online. But we've done those de-escalation drills where you don't know how it's going to end, where you have the guy is angry about whatever scenario we've created, and we're applying all the de-escalation tactics, but we don't tell the defender how it's going to end. They have to read the situation and keep trying. So we've had it where, the guy does keep getting ramped up and he does attack them, but also where the de-escalation works, but they never know which is which. But the only way to really do that well, at least in my experience, is if you have really good people who are willing to really genuinely role play.
Yeah, you need those role. I'm like, you need actors. Sometimes you need to be an actor in Krav Maga, and it will make the training better. Yeah, absolutely. I love doing those scenarios and have them like usually with the staff and having them. This is what we're gonna do. I have one that I use, and there's so many times that the student wants to use Krav Maga when law enforcement is there and I have the gun, the bad, quote, bad guy.
Right.
You're really a good guy. It's kind of, I'll do it like a mistaken identity, or, this guy, I'll use one like, hey, you touched my kid, you're going to jail. I called the cops, and I'm very calm until they like will come at you. And I'll like put the gun on them and say, you move back, you're going to jail. We bring in some neighbors, and they're like, hey, cool. Hey, I'm cool. And like, hey, you just hold on to them. I've called the cops. They're coming. The amount of people that I have that decide to go for the gun when law enforcement, I'm like, they're here. Law enforcement is here. Here they come. You stay right there. And they go for the Krav Maga disarm. I'm like, why did you go for the disarm?
Yeah.
Like, well, you pointed the gun at me. And I'm like, yeah, but it wasn't very threatening at all. And law enforcement was there. The guns are on me. They're not on you. They're on the guy with the gun in this. They don't know who's good or bad. And for that, like, there's a guy with a gun. Their life is in danger from the guy with the gun, not you that's unarmed.
Yeah. And all this gets, speaking in broad terms, into a controlled environment once the police arrive. Like now you can talk to the police officer, you can explain yourself the story. Now this all gets into a structure that can be managed. That's entirely different than being threatened with a gun on the street when there's nobody around to help.
It's totally, And I'm like, I'm the guy that's probably going to get some legal action because I had you at gunpoint walking out of your front door to your car. So, but it's, sometimes that willingness, and that's what I like doing those drills to just, hey, let's just wake up a little bit, or, I love failing, let's mess up in here. Let's mess up here. And, so we don't make those mistakes in real life. So
absolutely.
I love the drill. I think that's, great aspect of Krav Maga is doing the drills and having fun with those type of situations, but fantastic stuff. So I think I took a ton of your time, John. I thank you for joining me.
I'm happy to. The time flew by. Great.
Bit over, and I still have questions. Chat Open AI still has questions for you. But I thoroughly love talking to you and sharing what you do with the Krav Maga Alliance. And I think you got a great community and great group around you. And I think that, comes from the top down. It's like your t-shirt, lead by example, and that comes from the top down. I think you're a fantastic leader, and that's why so many people wanted to follow you. I love being a part of it, and you're there for your people. You've been there for difficult times in my life, and I just want to thank you again.
Well, now you're embarrassing me, but you're welcome for that. You are a good friend and a big part of what we're doing, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I love being a part of it. So thanks a ton, John. I will talk to you soon.
That's good, man. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll talk to you soon.